welcome back to the Leah Moses Entrepreneur Podcast, the podcast where we speak about business, financial education, entrepreneurship, and anything under these brackets, right? I'm a huge advocate for people starting their own businesses, building their brand, and attaining financial freedom, right? That's the journey that I'm on, and I'm just encouraging others who are listening to this podcast to keep pushing. And today I want to speak about, the principle of exiting the rat race. How to exit the rat race based upon Robert Kiyosaki's game, based upon the things and the principles that he would have gone through and taught in his books and his CDs and whatever he has, right? And so, just drawing reference from the game, he has a game called the Cash Flow, right? Cash Flow game. And basically that game is about teaching you principles as to how to exit the rat race. So the rat race is commonly, what we call living from paycheck to paycheck. You get some income, and out of that salary, you just pay expenses, right? Sometimes you pay all right back into expenses, and so you live paycheck to paycheck. You have no extra for anything or any investments or business. Or sometimes after you would have paid expenses, you have very little, right? So it's not comfortable at all, even though the bills are paid. And so that's still classified as the rat race. And so what Robert Kiyosaki's game does is that it asks you, it challenges you to come out of the rat race, and I'll explain that goal, how you get there according to this game. And really it is applicable in real life, how you get out of the rat race, and then how you play in the big leagues, the leagues that we like. We in the Caribbean and the Trinidad and Tobago, we like to say the 1%ers, right? But the big tracks also has new goals for people to accomplish, and I'll also get into that, and that would be, what we'll be dealing with on this particular podcast. So the rat race. So you're involved in the rat race, and what happens at the start of this rat race game, you are given some cards to choose, right? And the cards are really your profession, right? Because in life, usually we choose our professions, right? More than likely, you will decide where you apply for a job, or you will decide to go through a training to get a particular job, right? And so you choose your card, and whatever card you get, right, that card will have with it your salary as well as the common expenses. Of course, it's just, some average numbers that you may have, for your expenses, similar to life, right? While the figures may not be exact, it's the principle that matters. So you have some expenses, you have the income, and usually you don't have any passive income to start, right? Usually in the rat race, you don't have passive income. You're not at that level yet. You maybe don't know, or you aren't tapping into resources to figure it out, to find out, right? Or, whatever it may be. And so as you play, of course, you have to roll some dice, and the dice, just like Monopoly, the dice, how much ever comes up on the dice, that's the amount of spaces you move. And the board is designed in such a way that, yes, along the way, you have your paydays coming up. Along the way, you have your deals, right? The ability to take some deals, some business opportunities. And so in the real world as well, from time to time, somebody you may see on your Facebook, on your Instagram, or probably somebody your family may come with opportunities, big and small, right? We may come our way, so you have those opportunities. But also along the way, we have some, problems, right? That's called doodads on Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, right? But these cards now are things like, you decided to buy some shoes, so you have to pay the banker $200, or you decided to buy a boat, right? Now, when these cards are pulled, you have to pay it. So while in real life, I may be saying, you decided there are some other stuff you decided to buy, there are some other stuff that you can't decide. So on the board, there's a particular spot. If you land on it, it says baby, right? And so if you land on that, you have to include now the expense that they say that your child will cost, right? Based on your profession. There on the card, it tells you if you have children, your expense per month will be whatever figure. And so that is so practical in real life, because as we have, our relationships, marriages, whatever, children come. Sometimes we plan it, sometimes we don't. And so when that happens, you have a new expense in your life now. So it's very similar to real life. And then we have another spot that says, you downsize. And if you get there, you have to miss turns, you have to pay you have to pay your total expenses immediately, and so on. And what the game is really trying to do is get you to ensure that you have cash flow, but not just cash flow coming in terms of just your payday, but when you when you are exposed to the opportunities, big or small, it's a matter of knowing how to evaluate these. And the goal of the people that are still in the rat race is always to get your passive income, or to get your passive income to be more, or to cover those expenses. And that's the first step to building, to coming out of that rat race, from depending on job to job, depending on gig to gig, where you have to keep working, putting in your time, putting in your effort just to get some money. But now you can invest in assets, you can invest in businesses. And so if you do that, you are now out of the rat race and into the big league. And so for in a practical sense, outside the game, if you're just dependent on your salary or anything that you do personally for money, self-employment, you are the owner and operator of your business, you're still just depending on, yourself, your time, which is limited. However, the moment that you begin investing in assets, right, things that bring money in, and you get it to a point where it covers those expenses, you would have officially come out of the rat race in real life. And so in previous, media, whether it be on my YouTube or on this podcast, I would have highlighted, start looking for things that could be done, for assets that can cover bill by bill. You don't have to find $1 billion business opportunity. You don't have to be the next Jeff Bezos or the next Mark Zuckerberg to create Facebook or to create Amazon. But you could definitely see what asset, what business, what rental business could I do, whether it be tools or whatever, that can cover my light bill. Then you look for something else that can bring in money without you, that can cover the the water bill, right? If you have a mortgage, then you have to up the game, because the mortgages tend to be a little more money per month, right? So you look for something now that can produce that. It may be car rentals, right? Depending on how long a person rents or leases a vehicle, it might cover a mortgage. And so these are the things that we have to start thinking about, as individuals, if we are looking to exit this rat race, right? And so after you exit the rat race, because what comes up in the opportunities, when these opportunities come by, it's a combination of things. It's real estate opportunities, it's mutual funds, it's buying shares in a company, all these things that have the ability to cover your expenses. So with shares, what usually happens, if you get in at a low price, a lot of the cards will tell you, hey, you alone could buy this share for this low price at this point in time. And that happens with so many companies. We have companies going public left, right, and center around the world, wherever you're listening to this from. And so we would have probably known or seen or heard of when a price of a share was very low. And then fast forward 5 years, 10 years, the price of that share has gone through the roof. Right? And so if you had some shares, you could have liquidated or sell back some, thereby giving you some cash flow to do something greater with, right? To exit that rat race. So you have these shares, of course, real estate, it will tell you, how much return on investment you'll get every month, what cash flow it brings every month, how much you would have to down pay. And so it takes a little, calculations in your mind to, understand if it's a worthy deal. But the concept still stands, that these are the things that we are to be looking into, things that can work without us, whether we are well, whether we are not well, whether we are, we lack the physical ability to continue working or not. You have an asset that makes money for you, right? And of course, being an advocate for cryptocurrency, that has proven to be an answer for many people around the world. Bitcoin, when people got into Bitcoin at a low price, right? 10 years ago, 12 years ago, right? And then now they are reaping the benefits of the price that it has turned to, right? So this is really the way out from the rat race. You have your job, yes, you are getting money, yes, but you are really supposed to be looking for deals, and it doesn't have to be big deals. I remember when I first played this game, I was excited because you can choose between big or small deals. I was excited to only pull the big deals, and then when I pull the big deals, it's because I realized, based on the money I'm making, or based on the money that I put down, because you are limited on a lot of times on an average job, you are limited to how much money you could put down just from that job alone, right? So because the money itself is not all that big, so even if you had the ability to put away all, it's still small to deal in big deals, right? Which may be franchises and investing in big businesses. And so, it's not about rushing to big deals or being able to just buy big deals, because then you'll be stuck. Because you'll say, my salary is only this. How can I invest in this? Somebody selling a house, for $500,000. And it's brand new. That's a steal of a deal, but I don't have the money. The problem, the answer is not in just finding big deals. Small deals can get you to that point of having bigger deals. And so when you come out of the rat race in the game and you end up on the big tracks, now your goals change from simply finding cash flow every month that covers your expenses, right? You are now to be finding business deals and opportunities and real estate deals to now buy whatever goal you have. So on the wider track, before you even start the game, you have to put down your icon, whichever color you choose. You have to put that down on a goal. And so some of the goals around the track, be it, whether it is you always had a goal to help or to donate to a charity. That might be $200,000 on the board game. If you wanted to be on a cruise, $100,000 it might be, whatever it may be. So these are the 6-figure goals now, right? Because we all have different goals, and it's nothing wrong if the goal is purely just you want to have certain things. You want a mansion, that's your goal, that's okay, right? Some other people might be, if I make all this money, I just want to give it all away. These are the philanthropists among us. That's okay as well. So they have goals, and you have to put down this goal. So when you get out of the rat race and you're dealing in the big leagues, right? Your goal now is to be, when you land, of course, going around, you have now things like divorce. And of course, we know divorce tends to rattle a lot of people, who are wealthy. If you didn't have certain documents in place, half your wealth is gone should you have a divorce. So there is a divorce that you can land on that board, and that's why every opportunity you get to actually land on the good deals, is to look into it, having that cash flow to take it so that it can bring more cash flow, right? And so there are some other challenges, on the fast track or on the bigger track. But the goal is to get involved in businesses this time. So now your deals will cost a little more money in terms of a down payment. But of course, in return, you get bigger inflows of cash. And so the person who wins, how the winner is determined is by the person who actually is able to buy their goal that they chose from the start, if they are able to afford it, right? Based on their cash flows that they built, they win. Or if you have an additional $50,000 worth of cash flow, you would have won the game. And so just bringing it back to real life, that's how it works. If you are able to achieve your goal, be it $1 million goal, a $500,000 goal, a $100,000 goal, whatever the sum is, when you are able, after you come out that rat race, you got the passive income that's paying your monthly bills. Great, you're out the rat race, congrats, you're on the big tracks. And now you have some businesses, you have some systems you have set up that bring money in, right? And so when you are able to now achieve that goal that you set out, and that's why it's important to set goals, that may be our next podcast or next time, but when you are able to buy your goal, that's it. Because now you would have figured it out. You would have figured out what many people with blood, sweat, and tears fight for: this financial freedom, the ability to not have money be a factor or an issue ever again, right? So that's really what the game encourages you to do. And of course, some other things in between, but generally this is the concept. So I just wanted to bring it here to you all, loyal listeners, to hear, just in case you forgot, or just in case you would have heard it before, you now know the answer and the blueprint to stepping out of the rat race. And it doesn't matter how little your salary is, because there's always something that's coming out or launching that you can get yourself involved in. As I said, with shares, a lot of the time, some shares, we had local banks where back, years ago, shares could have been as little as $20 for one, right, in certain companies. So of course, we could, if you are working, you can afford some shares at $20, or you can afford 5 shares, that's $100 at some point in time. And so there are these things that come up, these deals that come up that we can be investing in, right, to be getting ourselves on track, to have that passive income cover the expenses, right? So it's always important to note, what are your expenses? You know what your salary is. Most time it's fixed. If you're a business person, you would kind of have an idea what you usually bring in per month, and then from that figure you add up all your expenses, all your utility bills, everything you would spend. If you have a family, you have children, what do you spend? If you have a yearly expense like car insurance, divided by 12 months, find out what's the monthly, if you were to save every month towards paying that insurance, add it all together, get that figure, circle it, highlight it, and then start to work on getting some assets or some businesses set up in such a way that the income or the dividends or whatever you choose to invest in that comes in covers that expense amount, the total amount. And from the time you have that covered, you have exited the rat race, right? That will be, very, very good. And that's the aim. That's where we need to go right now as people who are looking for financial freedom. And what my motto right now is, it's not just about looking for financial freedom. My motto is financial literacy leads to financial freedom. And so Robert Kiyosaki was instrumental in, having myself and several others understand finances and understanding, the cash flow quadrant, all these things. These are books. Rich Dad Poor Dad is a book that everyone should have. Right, he has the guide to investing. He has several books, and they are not expensive. TT, some of these books are $60, $65 TT to get these books. Some of his books are actually in audio form, free on YouTube that you can tap into. Right, so let's get that financial literacy going. So that we can get to our financial freedom point. We would know exactly what to do. And it doesn't matter. Some people think that it needs to be a specific business because you see Jane Doe invested in X. You want to do what Jane Doe did to get your X, but it does not necessarily need to be what Jane Doe did. It could be something very simple that we're taking for granted. A lot of the time we heard before people saying, do what others aren't willing to do, and you will be rewarded greatly. So there are certain things a lot of people will turn up their faces at, right? They don't want to do that. They don't want to invest in such a business as that. But really and truly, that kind of business may be bringing in a great cash flow versus something that tends to look prestigious, right? So these are the kind of thoughts that we ought to, start to have in order to change around our finances. I would like to see everybody, and including myself, out of what we call the rat race by having our passive income pay every expense, so that we can take ourselves out of the equation and start to live life. We weren't created to work, but we could work if we choose. That's the way we're supposed to be thinking and living. But thank you for listening to this podcast. Be sure to tune in each and every Monday for a new episode. Take care.